Hey guys, what is up? Time to break down another massive international weekend of rugby, starting with South Africa versus Wales, but we're also going to delve into the total capitulation of the Wallabies at Murrayfield. What happened to the men in green and gold? They hit the wall. Also, we're going to talk about the All Blacks. Were they pretty bad? Was Italy very good? We're going to talk about England, Japan, Ireland, Fiji. We're going to cover it all. Let's get to it, guys. Well, look, there's no question that the Springboks have certainly finished 2024 in the box seat. Pieter-Steph, the Toit, has just won the male 15s player of the year. They're undoubtedly the team of the year. They dropped 2 games. It looks like Ireland's going to end up dropping 3. The All Blacks have dropped 4 games in total. So I think that's pretty clearly your 1, 2, 3 in the world right now, whatever the rankings say officially. But the Springboks probably could have finished with even more gloss, 45 points to 12. That is a hell of a hammering, but with the sorry state that the Welsh were in and having leaked 50 to the Wallabies, you seriously wondered if the Springboks could hit 100. I mean, this is the lowest ebb the Welsh have ever been at. So I'm going to break down some key performers and some of the key stats here, but I'm also going to give you a clue, and it's right here on this board, as to why it is that this didn't blow out more, how it is that the Welsh sort of limited the damage. I think the first guy I want to call out is Mostert for the Springboks, the huge lock who has had an injury-plagued year. The highlight reel will show you running in for a try in the first 10 minutes, but actually it was his work all around the pitch, his excellent tactical work at the breakdowns. Let's look at the statistics here. Where's that line-out statistic? Yep, 100% to 83. The Springboks line-out was faultless. Multiple people taking the ball, but he was instrumental in the set piece. And that was great to see because we talk a lot about Ebenezer. We talk a lot about Snyman coming off the bench. But this was sort of a real reminder of the quality of that big unit there in the middle row for South Africa. And then the other shining lights for me were Damian Delende and Jesse Creel. For me, and this is high praise as a New Zealander, they're sort of the modern day Ma'anonu, Conrad Smith. Right? They have a complementary skill set. Delende is just so good at breaking the line. Creel has that pace, that power, and he distributes well. He can finish an opportunity, but he can also get the ball to his outsides. And when you've got Cheslin Colby and Kurtley Arendse as your wingers, you're in a luxury position there. So, look, the Springboks really coasted to victory here. They didn't have to work too hard for it. And you even felt when it hit the 12-minute mark and they were up 12-0, well, this is just going to be one-way traffic. But there was a bit of resistance from the Welsh. And if we look at one of the stats on this board, you might actually be surprised. And it's this one here. Turnover wins, 2-8. The Welsh actually got stuck into the breakdown. A little bit surprising when you have Sia Khaleesi, Pieter-Steph du Toit, World Rugby Player of the Year out there. You start to think, well, how is that really possible? And this has been a little bit of an Achilles heel for the Boks all year, very small Achilles heel. Tony Brown's betting in this new attack style, and that means that often the flankers are out wide in the trams, okay? That pulls them away from the breakdown at times as the Boks look to play this more lateral, wider game, which generally they're getting a lot of fruit from. But occasionally, it just means that the Boks are a little teeny bit undermanned at the breakdown, where in the past you feel like they would have just been absolutely pouring in. So that is maybe one tweak for 2025, getting that balance right between this new wide game that the Boks are playing very well, by the way, but also continuing to just destroy the breakdown, which historically the Springboks have always done. Another talking point from this game was Hendrikse and Hendrikse, 9 and 10 brothers playing there. How did they do? Well, I probably prefer the Hendrikse at 10. I'm not sold on the Hendrikse at 9. For me, Grant Williams is your best halfback. But, this is Rassie trying to build that squad of 50 for 2027. I feel like every time I talk about the Springboks, I keep mentioning that, but it's hard not to because he's rotating the players through, constantly changing his match day 23. And now you have so much depth in the number 10 position for South Africa. I mean, you've obviously got Pollard. You have Marnie Lebok, who played meaningful minutes on this tour. Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu, who's had some injuries, but, he started against the All Blacks earlier this year, which is a pretty big vote of confidence. Now you got Hendrikse as well. I kind of think it's time for Rassie to change up the plans and start to pour some more concentrated minutes into his top 2 number 10s. He probably needs to settle on that. But what do you guys think? If you're winning while you're rotating, maybe you don't need to change. Maybe you give them all pretty much equal game time. What do you think? I'm really curious with the South Africans who watch this channel. Who do you think at the end of 2024 is your top number 10? Because I think it's controversial. For me, of course, I love Pollard. I think he's a clutch player, but I see the attacking upside of Manie Libbok. I loved what Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu did against the All Blacks. I mean, I loved it objectively. I hated it as a New Zealander, but I loved the attacking intent and the game management for such a young player. Now we have this Hendrickse bloke to think about. I mean, it's almost like too many first 5'8". So let me know, South Africans, what you think. Who is the best number 10? And which 9 should be throwing the ball to him? Because that's a bit of a controversial area too. I think one other thing I want to say about this game is, listen, I don't need to tell anyone about Sia Khaleesi, Pieter-Steph, Toit. I mean, they are legends of international rugby, let alone South African rugby. Like, their reputations are minted. But Jasper Wiese, number 8, he's not in that rarefied air. He was fantastic in this game. He really delivered a lot of physicality around the park. And, you know, he was instrumental in getting that go forward for the South Africans, constantly hitting the line. And the backs shone, but it was the big boys up front breaking the line that led to this stat, which is horrifying from a Welsh perspective. Where is it? Here we go. Post-contact meters. Look at this one. 439 to 90. I mean, that shows you how anemic the Welsh attack really was. But that's brutal. Over 4 times the post-contact meters. The South African backs can shine when they get that go-forward ball. Let me tell you, in this game, that go-forward ball was not a problem. The Red Dragon was beaten up front. So you almost think the score should have been more. And look, I will give credit to Wales. I actually felt they showed more spark than they did against Australia. There was something about playing the world champions that did seem to lift them a bit. They put together a couple of tries. They actually scored last to put just a little bit of sweetness in the mouths of their fans, although, I mean, it's a minor consolation given that the Boks scored 7 tries. But where to from here? What happens to Warren Gatland? Rock bottom for Wales. This is below rock bottom. Do you let him go? Do you bring in a younger coach? Look, that's above my pay grade, but if you want to go purely based on results, Gatland's head has to roll. Think it's time to try something else. Yes, the talent pool is pretty depleted in Wales, but clearly the strategy from the head boss, it's just not all coming together. So I do think it's time. 2025, start fresh, get on a better path towards Rugby World Cup 2027. So overall, a fantastic season for the Springboks. They only dropped 2 games, clearly number 1 in the world. Think New Zealand's going to be nipping at their heels next year, but for now, number 1 with a bullet. Speaking of New Zealand, nice segue, let's look again at the All Blacks versus Italy. How do I feel after sleeping on it? I actually think people are not giving Italy enough credit. I think this is a greatly improved side. I think their work at the breakdown can be phenomenal at times. And you have to really give the All Blacks their flowers for putting the game away when they were really exhausted at the end of this draining 5-match tour. And the Italians came to play, and they played out of their skins. Let's not forget it was a first-string Italian side. I don't want to excuse all of the errors that the All Blacks made, because it was pretty damn rough out there. But actually sleeping on it, you know, it probably looks a little bit better than it did at the time. The one mistake Razor Robertson might want to walk back is that he could have actually injected some more fresh blood. You might have noticed if you watched my recap of the game, I didn't mention TJ Perenara. I didn't mention Sam Cane, who, of course, walked off the field to a standing ovation as he thoroughly deserved. And the reason is they didn't make a huge impact on the game. I think, in retrospect, maybe that was a good chance to start Peter Lakai at 7. He's going to be your guy going forward. It was a good chance to get Cortes Ratama on the bench, put any nostalgia, put any sentiment aside, put the new boys in. And in a funny way, I think playing the A-list All Blacks team backfired a little bit, because I think that they were just out on their feet. I think they were dead men walking. So perhaps an injection of youth might have actually led to a more convincing victory for the All Blacks. But the main thing I took from that game is if you want to beat the All Blacks, it all starts at the breakdown. And they got their work cut out for them next year. Sam Cane's going to be gone. Lakai is going to really have to move into that number 7 jersey and make it his own quickly. Unless Ardie Savia goes in there, you have Wallace Satidi at 8. Does Shannon Frizzell come back into the mix next year? Does Samipeni Finau come of age? We have a lot of work to do in that back row, because Italy, who is ranked 10th in the world, really disrupted the All Blacks ball. Which brings me to another point, and that is Cam Roigard. I think At times, it looked like he was really in trouble. He was going backwards. And that's not all on him. I was quite defensive of Cortez Ratama, who didn't have a great game against Ireland, but it's not the halfback's role to single-handedly fend off the opposition back row. And at times, the Italians were making sure the All Blacks had slow, nasty, rubbish ball. I don't put the heat on the halfback to stem that tide. I think that you've got to be hitting the breakdown with better technique. And I don't know that the All Black loose forwards really did that yesterday, to be honest with you. So that's a big work on for them. But overall, 10 out of 14, a fair return for the All Blacks. 71.4% winning record for Razor. You have to give the season a B+. And there are signs of real growth heading into next year. We're just going to see, though, are the Boks going to keep pushing on? And is that gap going to remain? Or can we chase them down? Are the Springboks a team that have kind of peaked and we're a team on the rise? Or is that delusional? Are the Boks actually getting better and better as they build depth? That's going to be the interesting question in the next couple of years of World Rugby. Now, I thought that the Wallabies might also be in this mix. I thought they were really having a great tour. They beat England. They annihilated Wales. Well, that all ended at Murrayfield. What the hell happened? The Aussies just hit a wall. It went from the Wallabies back to the Wobblies. And it just shows there's still that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in their DNA. Fabulous one week, appalling the next. Discipline. That's the first thing I noticed in that game. I want to say that the Aussies had 6 or 7 penalties against them in the first quarter. Now, my rule of thumb is that usually if you incur 10 penalties, if you get into double digits, you're on the fast track to lose the game. So at that rate, you just felt like the Aussies were going to be in a hole. And Angus Bell, the loose head, who has been fantastic, absolutely fantastic, destructive with the ball in hand. He had a shocker of a game in the scrums. Look, I think he's a good player. I really do. I think he offers a mobility in the props that the Wallabies haven't necessarily always had, and they need that up front. Let's just call that a nightmare of a day. Everybody has one at some point, and hopefully he can bounce back. But that was kind of symptomatic of the time that the Aussies were having, an absolutely torrid time. The Scots came to play. And look, the nice thing about losing to South Africa a couple weeks back, in an effort that was very plucky, very determined, full of heart, well, it really sharpened the Scottish game. So they actually came into this game nicely tapered and ready to pounce against a Wallabies team who was well off the mark. And most obviously on defense. I haven't seen such soft D on this whole tour as that Aussie backline. Guys who are normally more reliable, Tom Wright, Callaway, they were just doing turnstile tackles. We know about Max Jorgensen. He's great on attack. He scored that winning try against England. He also looked suspect defensively. So I think the Aussies are a team that when they're going forward, they look like $1,000,000. When they're on the back foot, when they're going backwards, you can put a lot of pain on them. And that's the difference if you look at the Rugby Championship. All Blacks in South Africa hang in there. They're gritty, especially when the game's not going their way. Argentina is more like that, but they can have a bad day too. And the Wallabies are at the bottom. When things are not going their way, when the penalty count is going against them, when their pack is on the back foot, they have a tendency to fall apart. And we saw that again in Scotland. So until they fix that, it's going to continue to be a roller coaster for Aussie fans. I really hope they get their poop in a group for the Lions series. I'm hoping that is competitive. I don't want to necessarily see a 3-0 whitewash, but on the evidence of yesterday, we're probably heading in that direction. So can the Aussies bounce back and beat Ireland? Never say never, but it looks a lot less likely after yesterday. Speaking of Ireland, they had a very good win over Fiji, 52 points to 17. That will give a little bit more life back to the Dublin faithful who had their hearts ripped out when they watched the All Blacks take apart their local boys. But look, it was kind of one-way traffic. The Fijians did not have a good day. They were basically outsmarted. They were dominated in the set piece. They were really pervious to the pick and go once the Irish got into their 22. These weren't spectacular long-range tries. These were patient, professional, well-built tries from the Irish, and ultimately they just were able to get through that white wall. A couple of bright spots for the Fijians. Number 10, Caleb Muntz. He seems to be the guy. He basically ran the game well. He had a lovely break to set up a try, and that shows a lot of heart because the Fijians were absolutely under the pump at that point. But look, the Fijians, they made mistakes, they got yellow cards, and against a much higher ranked team at home, it was never really going to end any other way. Not an entertaining game from a neutral perspective. Certainly a game that soothed the nerves for the Irish. And you've got to say they bounced back. They beat a very good Argentina team. If they can put the Aussies away, they'll be feeling a lot better than after their loss to New Zealand. But nevertheless, the Kiwi game was kind of the main fixture of the series. So it was kind of soured from the very beginning by dropping that game. But nevertheless, I think they're going to finish the year ranked number 2. And on balance, that seems like a pretty fair reflection of their year. Beat the Springboks at home, won the Six Nations. You can't argue that they're still top dogs in rugby. It's just, are the Kiwis and even maybe the Argentinians and the French going to run them down in the next couple of years? Watch this space. England bounced back big time in a surprisingly entertaining game. They put Japan to the sword. Some slick backline play. This was really England unfettered, playing a wide, roaming, high-pace, high-energy attacking style. Offloads, no-look passes, just the full bag of tricks. It was a delight for the local crowd. They really needed that after dropping 5 in a row and losing 3 Southern Hemisphere games in consecutive order. Never good from a Red Rose perspective. But where does that leave Steve Borthwick? I still think maybe you cut him. Yes, you beat Japan convincingly, but you got to look at the balance of the year overall, and I think this is probably the team in World Rugby who's just falling short of their potential the most. They were good enough to be World Cup semi-finalists. They should be in that top 4 mix, but they're just not cracking through, and it seems to be psychological, not about talent. The talent is there. I think maybe it's time for a change in Wales and England. What do you guys think? Do you persevere with Steve Borthwick, or is it curtains for him after an underwhelming 2024? I also did learn a stat after the game that made me look at it in a different light. Yes, the eye test was good. England racked up lots of points, but apparently the Japanese post-contact meters were similar, if not identical, to the English post-contact meters. That tells me that England is still too leaky on defense, that they're not shutting down threats fast enough, that they're giving away easy meters. And until they fix that, they're going to probably keep on being on the wrong end of the ledger against higher ranked teams than Japan. The reality is, with the blitz defense that England plays, it's a high impact style. You can knock the stuffing out of the opposition. They've done that to the All Blacks a couple times this year, but you need accuracy. And the reality is, England is missing too many tackles at this level to realize their potential. Until they fix that, they're not going to come over the top of New Zealand, South Africa. In fact, they're going to possibly keep losing fixtures to the woeful Wallabies. So much to think about over the break for this English side. And let's finish with France, Argentina, 37 points to 23. The French are victorious. A perfect autumn series for them. Well done. You have to say that along with the Springboks, they are the team of this tour. The Boks are probably the best in the south. The French probably the best from the north. And 2 words, Antoine DuPont. They played off 9 a lot today, and his wide skip balls were just beautiful. They absolutely lacerated the Argentina defense. They didn't know where the ball was going to. DuPont mixed up his options so well. That's what makes him the best 9 on earth. You never quite know what he's going to do or who he's going to hit with that bullet pass. Just when you think he's going long, it's a short ball. Just when you think they're playing it tight, bam, he'll skip a couple players. So that's what really lingered in my mind. As long as DuPont is fit and healthy, France is going to be pretty much beating everyone in their path for the foreseeable future, maybe with the exception of the Springboks. I think that's actually the big battle we really want to see. But full credit to France. They've bounced back from the disappointment of that Rugby World Cup agony last year at home, and they're looking the goods. All right, guys, we've still got Wallabies Ireland coming up, but that's it for this weekend. I hope you enjoyed. Let's talk in the comments. I'll catch you for another one real soon. Take it easy. Bye for now.